I want to talk tonight about Tulsi Gabbard. I have to show you this video. So Tulsi Gabbard, I was a big Tulsi Gabbard fan in 2020 when she ran for president. I loved her, what I thought was an anti-war message. I felt like she had an anti-war message. I felt like she was against the establishment. She was anti-war. She spoke out against the DNC. She spoke out on behalf of Bernie Sanders. I really felt like we had a fighter, an anti-establishment fighter, much like what we see in Robert F. Kennedy Jr., what we saw in Bernie Sanders, what we see in Donald Trump. There's a lot of these anti-establishment people who have been rising up, more populist. And so Tulsi, for me, was that person. And I really loved Tulsi. I championed her, interviewed her, and later, then she went on and endorsed Joe Biden. I definitely was disappointed by that. But she's evolved, or I don't know if she's evolved or if people, I hate to say it, like Anna Kasparian were right. Anna Kasparian with TYT, in that when many of us were supporting Tulsi, she railed against Tulsi and she said, you people are blind. You're just like super into Tulsi, but you're not seeing the truth. And she's an Islamophobe. She's totally against Muslims. She does want to continue the war on terror. She's not anti-war. She's none of the things that you people think that she is. And then, there was that scandal where Tulsi had said a lot of things that were against the LGBT community. And then she had to come back out and say, no, I do support LGBT. I'm not against LGBT. And she made this big apology. And then she's since left the Democrat, after she didn't win the election, she's since left the Democratic Party. And she's ingratiated herself more with the right. Now, I even told Tulsi personally at one point, I think you should try again, but this time run on the Republican ticket. Now, my viewpoint on that was similar to Donald Trump. He was able to hijack the Republican Party. You can hijack them. They don't have, they actually have more of a democratic process than the Democratic Party. And they are in flux. And there's a lot of this anti-establishment populist feeling sentiment going on with Republicans. They don't want the same old anymore. So there's an opportunity there to get in. And you would be aligned just as much with Republicans as you are with Democrats. You just swap out which issues you're aligned with each one with, right? That's what I told her the last time I really spoke to her. She has certainly moved to the right and more towards Republicans, but not in the ways that I personally like, not in the ways that I thought in my mind would be the right way to go about this. She really dove into the woke culture, started to rail against LGBT, the trans agenda, which many of us are very uncomfortable with what is going on and don't agree with what is going on. So we agree with Tulsi on this, but to make that your platform, to make that your whole calling card, when there's so many other things plaguing Americans, it's a bit, it's a little suspect. It's like, okay, you're just playing to a certain crowd. It's not that you're actually trying to benefit America. So that part of it, when she came out really railing against more of the trans agenda, the wokeism and whatnot, it kind of gave a little bit of credibility to the claim that she wasn't really truly changed on the LGBT issue. She was just saying what she needed to say because she was a Democrat at the time. And when she came out really woke or anti-woke and really against the agenda, the gay pride parades and all these various different things, it made many people think, well, okay, which side, did she believe what she said the first time around when she made a lot of comments that were against the LGBT community? Or did she mean it when she then defended it and said, no, I take it back, I apologize? Like, which Tulsi is the real Tulsi? And now when it comes to the war on terror and Islam, unfortunately, it does look like the Anna Kasparians of the world, Anna was right. And I said this even publicly on Twitter a while ago. And she even said, well, thanks for acknowledging this. So just to let you know, this is not new. But this is the latest video from Tulsi when she was on Fox News. This is what she said. Go ahead and watch.
I don't know if Kamala knows what she's up to, but the reality here is when you look at things like what Representative Cori Bush is saying, what the Squad is saying, what so many of these other people are saying who are accusing Israel of committing a genocide, it is the height of hypocrisy because they're apologists and supporters of these Islamist Hamas terrorists who are calling for a genocide, the extermination of all Jews, not just in Israel, but around the world. And we're seeing this being carried out by these violent mobs and threats and other things that are happening against Jewish people literally around the world. And the worst part is they're doing this under the guise of, well, we care about innocent people and we don't want people to get hurt, when in fact, they are, in essence, supporting and apologizing for the barbaric actions of Hamas against innocent women, children, and civilians.
I called it creating the monster, like they're Dr. Frankenstein. And now the monster in their progressive wing is turning against them. But they're trying to pretend like this is kind of a shocking development. It's not a shocking development. No. This has always been there, but it's also deeply anti-American, is it not?
It is, and it is against the very foundational principles and values of who we are as a country. These Democrats, they have called people like me an Islamophobe for many years just for speaking the truth about radical Islam, about the threat that this Islamism poses to the freedom and peace and security of the American people and people around the world.
Well, do you believe, as do some of these Republicans in the Senate, that we should be bringing in more Afghan refugees? We brought in, what, 80, 90,000? We didn't vet any of them. I'm sure some of them are great people and helped us in Afghanistan. But do we have 80,000 interpreters or drivers? I mean, I don't think so.
There are many, unquestionably. Yeah. But just like we're so concerned about Biden's open borders and the fact that we've got millions of people coming in who are not vetted in any way, shape, or form, who have not been checked.
But they don't share our values, to Nigel Farage's point as to what you're seeing in England.
Right.
This is, they say, oh, you can't call it a clash of civilizations. Why not? It is a clash of civilizations. No women's rights, no belief in pluralism, the dignity of the individual, free expression. None of that.
No.
That's not on the table.
No. And that is the hypocrisy of seeing these, the LGBTQIA activists out there holding and waving the trans flag combined with the Palestinian flags. Like that's
a new level.
They don't know and understand what this Islamist ideology is, this radical Islam ideology where they actually want to kill people. They want to kill those people specifically.
Tulsi, they have to tie Ukraine to Israel because they know Ukraine
won't stand on its own.
It's not
that funding and again, they're trying to cheat the American people through their representatives by saying, okay, you support and you want to stand with Israel. Well, guess what? We're going to sneak in all of this other money that we're going to take out of your pocket and your bank account to go and support something that increasingly Americans are understanding.
It's not
this
working.
Proxy war against Russia is pushing us closer to nuclear war, and it's not in our best national security interests to do that.
Okay, so I want to start off by saying, so she goes on this rant about Islam and extremists, and that's fine. There are obviously extreme Islamists out there, and they are very oppressive, and we fight them, right, with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and whatnot. So she wants to continue the war on terror. She kind of had a similar answer when she was on Tucker Carlson's show when he wanted to talk about the increase in wars, and she kind of surprised him, it seemed. He thought she was going to give an anti-war answer, and instead she says, well, our greatest threat are these Islamist extremists, and we have to do everything we can in our power to stop this Islamist extremists. And then she says, people call me an Islamophobe, and I don't know why. Let me tell you why. Because the quote that was told before she went on this rant about extremist Islam, and we have to stop that, what Laura Ingraham actually said prior to that point was, she played the full quote. She says, first of all, she plays Kamala Harris talking. Kamala Harris is asked a question about Palestine, and Kamala answers, first of all, a terrorist organization, Hamas, struck Israel in the way that it did. I think it's important to recognize also the distinction between a terrorist organization, Hamas, and the Palestinian people and civilians, and they should not be conflated. That's what Kamala said. Laura's like, is she smart? And Tulsi goes on and talks about radical Islam. Now, many Palestinians are not even Muslim. Many of them are agnostic, not religious at all. Many of them are Christians. Some of them are even Jews. Believe it or not, I actually hung out with a bunch of Jewish Palestinians at a basketball court in the West Bank. They were Arabs. They were not Israelis, Jews who had settlements in the West Bank. They don't mix. These were Arab Palestinians who were Jewish by religion playing basketball in a big indoor basketball court with a bunch of Muslim Palestinians and Christian Palestinians, all three religions playing basketball in what was equivalent to a YMCA in the West Bank. So they exist. They're there. I interviewed the guy. I asked him, "So you're Jewish?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm Jewish." And his friends were standing there, his buddies, and I was like, "Are there very many Jewish Palestinians living in the West Bank?" There are some that had immigrated into Israel proper. And he says, we're not a big community, but we're here, we exist, and we choose not to immigrate to Israel. He says, we do have the political, legal right to immigrate in because we're Jewish, and the Israeli National Jewish Charter says that any Jew in the world is able to immigrate to Israel. That's part of their charter. They have a Jewish national identity. So if you're Jewish anywhere in the world, you're allowed to immigrate into Israel. But they said to me that they chose not to because they wanted to hold with solidarity with the Palestinian Arabs, because they identified more with the Palestinian Arabs who were Christian and Muslim than they did with Israelis as Jews. So that is what Tulsi is commenting on. She's commenting on this comment of Kamala saying Hamas and Palestine are not the same. You know, these are two different groups. There's a political group, a militia group, a terrorist organization, whatever you want to categorize them as, but they don't represent all of the people. And Tulsi goes on this big rant about Islam and how it's the most dangerous ideology. And sure, and it might be, but is it helpful to go fight it? Is it helpful to do endless wars? It sounds to me like Tulsi is actually, in fact, for endless wars against radical Islam. But does it help to blow up somebody's kids? Does it help to blow up their house? I mean, just think about it on a logical level. I mean, you might think you definitely do not like these people. You don't want them around. You don't want them taking over your country, but which none of us do. But do you think that it's going to help them change and their ideology is going to shift if you go to war with them? Or do you think that when you go to war with somebody, all it does is it riles them up to hate you more? It's usually what it does. Usually, if you're going to fight somebody, they're not going to just like serve you cake, right? That's not what's going to happen. They're going to be angry and they're going to fight you back. That is why we've seen perpetual violence in the Middle East. That's why we've seen this conflict has not ended. And Tulsi apparently wants to keep it up. So I don't know. She sounds a lot like Nikki Haley in this moment. That is kind of the feeling I get. For me, just a very big disappointment, to be honest with you. I'm very disappointed in Tulsi. I really liked Tulsi a lot. I love her family, her friend, I really supported and was genuinely a champion of Tulsi, and I'm very disappointed. That's all I can really say. I'm just really disappointed. Disappointed a lot lately.